The elite world of fine art auctions. With a bang of the auctioneer's gavel, a painting can sell for hundreds of thousands, even millions of dollars. In this high-stakes world, there's an ironclad mechanism that prevents forgeries from reaching the market. Every piece of art has a legitimate history, a pedigree, known in the art world as its provenance.
The provenance documents are the history, the absolute history of an artist's life and what he created.
But in 1986, the ironclad system of provenance failed spectacularly as a master criminal fooled the world's greatest art experts and executed the most sophisticated forgery scam in the history of modern art.
It was described in the New York Times magazine as art con of the century. It affected the whole of Europe in the art world, the United States, Canada, Japan. All of the main centers for art expertise.
Millions of dollars were lost, reputations were ruined, and the art market's most important commodity, its credibility, was left in tatters. But who was the mastermind behind this extraordinary crime?
All eyes fell on John Drew as being the main man in the scam.
But how could John Drew, a high school physics teacher with no connection to the art world, fool the experts and make millions flooding the market with forgeries? How did he do it? In 1986, John Drew, a high school physics teacher, floods the international art market with forged paintings, deceiving the experts and making himself millions.
What do we know about John Drew? John Drew seems to have deceived people for most of his life.
Fooling people is what John Drew does.
It's difficult to say to what level he was educated, because so much of John Drew's life is either a phony or counterfeit.
He said that he had a number of different qualifications, academic qualifications, a degree in nuclear physics. None of these we were able to trace, not one.
Drew's masquerade as an established scientist is amazingly convincing, but he wants more.
I think he felt that his intelligence had never been sufficiently recognized in the world of academic research.
So Drew now reinvents himself as a cultured art expert to get the respect he craves.
He must have read an inordinate amount at institutions, historical establishments, in order to find out as much as he possibly could about contemporary art. It's hard to actually imagine how much he must have read. He was absolutely plausible when talking to other people in the art history trade.
Driving around in his Mercedes and posing as a man of culture, Drew meets Batsheva Goudsmit. Independent and well-off, she lives in the upscale London neighborhood of Golders Green. Drew intrigues her and in short order moves into her house and her life.
She was quite well connected in North London, and John Drew used her connections to forward the idea that he was interested in art, that he was a collector of art, later obviously that he would have art for sale.
Drew's next step is to find someone with a talent for producing convincing modern art knockoffs. In the back pages of Private Eye magazine, he uncovers a starving artist with the skills he needs.
I get a phone call from a gentleman called John Drew, who said, "I've seen your advert in Private Eye," which just said genuine fakes, 19th century and impressionist paintings from £250. He said, "I would like a painting by Matisse." A week or two later, I called up that number and said, "Your painting is ready, sir. You know, how shall I meet you?" He said, "I'll be at Euston Station." And I said, "Well, you'll recognise me because I'll be the bloke carrying the painting." And he handed over a cheque for, I think it was £250.
Drew seemed to have this knack of once having met somebody, he knew that he would be able to manipulate them.
John Drew kept on coming. He kept on coming, yet another painting, yet another painting. And by this time, we were going back to his house. I was seeing the paintings on the wall. You know, if you looked at John, you just saw the house, you saw the car, you saw the wife, you saw the whole thing. Why not? It's perfectly good.
But Drew has bigger plans for these paintings than just decorating his walls.
He said, you know the last painting you did for me? I've taken it into Christie's, and they have valued this painting at £25,000. How would you like £12,000? I didn't even think twice. I just thought to myself, this is just too good to be true. £12,500.
With the promise of big money, Drew easily persuades Myatt to produce more paintings.
His greed overcame his good sense.
Myatt is commissioned by Drew to fake a painting in the style of the great modern artist, Alberto Giacometti. Within a week, Myatt forges a convincing Giacometti that Drew tantalizes prospective buyers with. Then, just as he's about to close the sale, French experts are brought in to authenticate the painting.
I got a phone call from him. He said, oh, they're sending experts over from France to look at the canvas and to look at the paint and to see if the stretches are right. I said, well, the stretches aren't right. I mean, they just come out the art shop. So he said, well, don't worry about that.
Drew has an answer. He draws upon his knowledge of science. He begins by assembling a frame using wood from an old painting. He then soaks tacks in salt water, and while they're still wet, hammers them into the frame. This causes the tacks to dry with a convincing rusty finish. Then, for his crowning touch, he takes the contents of his vacuum cleaner and rubs it into the front and back of the painting.
But I was terrified. I thought, well, we've had it now.
But Drew's handiwork convinces the experts that the painting is authentic. There's only one thing they question.
They're very interested in the previous history of the painting. Where did the painting come from? Who owned it previously? And, of course, our painting, having just come straight off the dining room table, as it were, had none of this.
It's then that Drew turns on the charm and convinces them that the painting had been owned by his father. Again, Drew's deception is so convincing, the experts are fooled.
And it had got this kind of seal of approval from these experts, and it sold. And it sold, I think, for £100,000.
Drew learns quickly. He realizes that the history of a painting is even more important than the painting itself. If he wants to make millions, he must find a better way to authenticate Myatt's works. He conceives a bold new scheme while browsing a rare collection of books in a used bookstore.
John Drew came across one of these books with an oval-shaped stamp in the front, saying the Order of Servite Mary and the name of the priory.
Drew visits this religious order where the books had come from.
Drew suggested to them that the sale that they had conducted might have been conducted improperly and without the correct permissions from higher up in the order in Rome. That was the last thing a hard-up monastic order wanted.
He then blackmails the prior into signing a letter stating that along with the sale of the books were numerous paintings and sketches.
So the order wrote a letter and it was given to Mr. Drew.
But of course, then he goes away. He has the facsimile stamp made up of the Order of Servite Mary. Merrily stamps his fraudulent paintings with this order.
And in the Graham Sutherland paintings, you will see in the bottom corner of each painting is a segment of an oval stamp.
Having successfully created a history for the Sutherland paintings and selling them for a fortune, Drew now ups the ante. He plots to move hundreds of fake masterpieces. He strikes at the heart of Britain's art establishment, the Tate Gallery, one of the world's most important museums.
I first encountered John Drew early in 1990 when I was working as an archivist in the Tate Gallery archive. John Drew had contacted the Tate Gallery about a donation of £20,000 to help with the cataloguing acquisition of various collections.
Obviously, authorities at the Tate Gallery were very grateful, as they would be. And he then gets privileged access into the archives, which is where he wants to be.
We had safely banked his cheque and felt that he was to be trusted. Through the summer of 1991, Drew came quite regularly, perhaps twice a month.
When you had a gallery, a little art gallery, I'm thinking of one in particular, the Hanover Gallery, and when it closed, all their books and their paperwork, receipts, ledgers would go to somewhere like the Tate Gallery.
Exhibition catalogues in the 50s were very flimsy affairs, sometimes just typed lists. It had very brief descriptions of the paintings.
He would get a programme for the art exhibition, and it would show what paintings were being exhibited, descriptions, pictures. And he not only stole from the archives documents, which he then cut and pasted for his own purposes,
where he could superimpose illustrations of forged works with the same name and same dimensions.
he then went and had printed identical programmes, except that one of the paintings in there would be one of his forgeries. So for all time, he's corrupted that archive.
Drew's true genius is now fully engaged. He targets all the major art archives in London, forging complex provenances, catalogues, bills of sale, and letters of validation for Myatt's 200 fake paintings. These will provide all the proof he needs to sell his paintings for millions of dollars. The only person he isn't fooling is his wife. Bathsheba is beginning to resent Drew's lies, absences, and obsessive secrecy.
It wasn't just that there was no relationship between the two of them. There was just an icy hostility. It was horrible, really horrible.
Drew is not only alienating his wife, but his partner in crime as well.
He was going on about a couple of my paintings, and something about the way he was talking really started to annoy me. I don't know quite what it was, and I didn't often get cross with him. But I said, John, for goodness sake, I painted these paintings, they're fakes. And it was like I'd hit him on the forehead with a sledgehammer. He just couldn't believe it. He went, no.
Drew's hold on reality is beginning to slip. He can no longer distinguish between his deceptions and what's real.
And he says, they are not fakes. Pulls back his coat. He had guns, real guns. And he just levels it at me. And as far as I remember, he pulled back the cocking pin like that, and I'm just sort of thinking, oh, bloody hell. He's going to shoot me.
John Drew's inability to distinguish between his lies and reality now threatens to bring his world of deception crumbling down. His partner in crime narrowly escapes being shot.
You never point even an unloaded gun at anybody. You just don't do it. And it took me ages to get over that, and I really was frightened. I basically stopped working for John.
Drew spins out of control. Years of lying take its toll. His relationship with his wife, Bathsheba, is about to collapse.
I'd had a divorce, but it was nothing compared to the sheer venom that there was between those two. It was evil. I mean, you'd walk into the house and he just hit you as you went into, there's something very strange going on in this house. It's horrible. It's full of hate.
In a fit of rage, Bathsheba breaks into Drew's private study, gathers up every document and bit of paper she can find, and stuffs them into garbage bags. Rather than throw all this material out, she has a better idea.
Bathsheba turned up at a police station in North London. Hundreds and hundreds of bits of paper. And she said, well, this is it. We then have to research each document. We know who's given the document to us, but is it a real document? Is it a created document? Is it a photocopy of a document? Is it the photocopy of half a document, and where's the other half? It took us about 3 months just to catalogue the documents.
Bathsheba bars Drew from the Golders Green home. Unaware that the police are investigating him, Drew relocates and continues his forgeries, desperately rushing to sell off the remaining Myatt paintings. He has an associate in New York show them to a respected art dealer.
And we purchased a painting by Alberto Giacometti. We decided that we would confirm its authenticity. I sent a letter and a transparency and a photograph to Lisa Palmer, who is the director of the Alberto and Annette Giacometti Foundation, asking her for a letter of authenticity. She would not give it to me.
Having purchased the Giacometti for a staggering $175,000, Bardos is very worried. The painting is worthless unless he can get the proper authentication. Through London connections, Bardos is put in touch with a well-known art researcher. He flies to London, where they meet at the Tate Gallery.
We went into the archives together, and here was a catalog. In this catalog is the Giacometti painting. And I said, well, obviously, I mean, here it is. There's the painting. What's all this fuss about? The painting must be real.
What Bardos doesn't realize, however, is that the researcher is none other than John Drew. What Drew doesn't know is that they are both under police surveillance.
We found out where Mr. Bartos was and invited him to come to New Scotland Yard when he realised what had been going on. I have to say, Mr. Drew was not on his Christmas card list.
Police seize the fake Giacometti. With the painting in their possession and letters from Drew implicating Myatt, they now have the necessary evidence to arrest the painter.
We knew it was Myatt that was the forger of the artwork itself.
Police knocked on the door, and there they were, 6 in the morning, Scotland Yard, Arts and Antiques Squad. Oh, damn. I knew exactly what they were there for.
And he immediately admitted what he'd been doing. In fact, we thought he felt greatly relieved that his actions, his criminal actions, had been discovered. He needed to get it off his chest. He told us what he'd painted, where it had been sent, how many, the types of series of paintings that he'd been painting.
Myatt implicates John Drew as the mastermind behind the fraud. The police move on Drew.
We decided that things had come to such a head that we had no option but to go and search his premises. So we conducted a very long search at his address. We even had cut and paste documents on his dining room table that he'd been working on. The stamps were upstairs in a bag. He was formally arrested and taken to his local police station.
Through a heart attack when he was first arrested. That is typical. That is typical Drew. They've caught me, but I'm not finished yet.
After selling 200 fake paintings in 12 years, master con artist John Drew is finally arrested. At trial, he fires his lawyers and conducts his own defense. He also claims that he has a severe heart condition and produces forged letters to support his claim.
We had to go into huge lengths, going to see doctor after doctor after doctor, to prove that this was nonsense. But the man never gives up.
Next, he claims he's actually working for the British Secret Service, selling the paintings to raise money for covert weapons sales.
There was an involvement of the security services in the purchase of weapons for some war that was going on, and he was being set up by not MI6, MI9 or something. It was so silly that it could almost have been true.
After months of these tactics, Drew is finally found guilty and sent to prison for 6 years.
Mr. Drew had a sort of a disdain for the art world. I think he thought they were all too good for their own good, they were too big for their own boots, and it was going to be him that was the one that tried to show them that no matter how clever they were, he was more clever.
It wasn't just making money. It was proving that he could fool the experts.
John Drew, the master con artist, was released from prison after serving only 2 years. Police estimate that there are still over 170 of his forgeries corrupting collections around the world.